What is up, everyone? I'm Dimitri Loiseau.
And I'm Valerie Noble. We are the proud creators of The Regard Breakdown, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes with Hollywood's top talent as we discuss the roadmap for success in the entertainment industry.
Each week, we bring you new episodes featuring the actors and industry insiders who work behind the scenes. These are the ones who create the persona, the look, and the brand from all your favorite TV shows and films. We are so happy that you tuned in because their stories are authentic, informative, and inspiring. Well, all right, guys, before we bring on our next guest for today, let's find out what's going on with the good folks on the Instagram. Sydney, what questions do we have for today?
Dimitri. We keep getting good ones. I'm really excited about this one because it's coming from a perspective that I think nobody's asked about just yet. But this week's topic is on maintaining a sense of reality. So one anonymous listener she DM'd me and wanted to know how successful creatives like yourselves or the ones that we've had on the show thus far have managed to stay grounded after having, so many successes or surreal experiences on sets or red carpets, what have you. So you guys know the drill. We're going to play everybody's favorite game on the clock, 60 seconds, and I cut you off and we go to our lovely, lovely co-host, whichever one of you that may be. So last time we started off with Dimitri. I'm going to say this time we're going to do ladies first once again. Val with the fist bump. I love the enthusiasm. So you are going to go first. You are on the clock in 3, 2, and 1.
This is a really great question because I happen to know a couple of cool people who do a lot of projects and have a lot of amazing experiences. And from what I've observed is they kind of they have 3 things that they follow. One, they have a lot of outside activities that they do once they're not working. The second thing I would say is they participate in giving back in some sort. So they either have a charity or, something that's close to their heart that they like to give back to. And then the third thing is they understand that work is work. And when they leave a particular set or, the film or show or red carpet, it's over and they kind of go back to normal. They keep a regular normal life. So they don't believe the hype of Hollywood necessarily. So I think those are the 3 things that can help. I'm trying to follow
that was really good though.
Oh, okay.
Really good.
Look at you hitting all the points in 60 seconds.
I have no idea what I'm about to say. I don't know what I'm about to say.
I don't believe you though. You keep like these, gems of wisdom under the hats you wear. So
under the hat.
I'm ready for you.
Pull it out of this hat. Yeah.
There we go. I'd say you have big shoes to fill, but we all know Miss Val has dainty, tiny feet. So there's some competition going though. All right. You ready? You on the clock in 3, 2, and 1.
Besides all the wonderful things that Val has already mentioned, I think it's really important that you surround yourself with people that are going to help you maintain, like being grounded, right? And typically, I think it's best to have people that are like outside of this business because they're not as affected, so to speak. And I think that they'll give you a really good reality check. So whether it's like friends that maybe you grew up with or friends that you acquired later on in life, I think that's very important. And Val definitely touch on one thing: you have to give back. Because what happens is that when you take yourself out of the equation and now you are helping someone or something else, then it gives you a sense of reality. So whether that's helping people get an education, whether that's helping people, with homeless issues, with, getting the basic necessities like water or whatever the case may be, I think that takes you out of that Hollywood, kind of mentality and puts you in a very much reality.
Oh, he had 4 seconds to spare.
I do what Val normally does.
Drop the mic. No, I love it.
Talk slow so that way when the time comes, I come right under.
Guys are too much. You're too much. But I love that message. I think that's really going to resonate with listeners. Do what you can when you can, whether you're a, super well-known superstar or Joe Schmo on the street, you know? We give back, we do good, we feel good.
Yes.
So I'm really excited for you guys to get into it today with our guest. I think that she'll have some pretty cool insight as well. So Dimitri, you want to let everybody know who's with us today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sydney. Well, our wonderful guest today has fostered an impressive career that has long resonated with her fans and always left them wanting more. Her first few roles on television proved that she was a force to be reckoned with. But it wasn't until 2005 that she began to be recognized for her versatility and quickly became a household name with her role as Sarah Tangretti on the Fox hit TV series Prison Break. She then continued to dazzle audiences with fiercely compelling performances, which featured main roles on AMC's The Walking Dead, USA's Colony, National Geographic's The Long Road Home, and the 8-episodic miniseries Unspeakable, which was featured on CBC Canada and Sundance TV. Some of her notable film credits include Faces in the Crowd with Mila Jovovich, Black November with Anne Hesh, Mickey Rourke, and Kim Basinger, as well as the blockbuster action film Into the Storm, which I loved, with Richard Armitage. Currently, she's on NBC's new show, Council of Dads. And of course, we are so excited that she could join us today. Everyone, please welcome Sarah Wayne Callies. Sarah!
Hi, guys!
How are you?
See you guys again.
So good to see you again. So good. Always, always good. How's everything?
You were the last people I saw in LA.
You know, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
That is very, very true. Yeah.
Or she was like one of the last things I did before I fled Los Angeles and came home.
It was such a lovely day on the beach, right?
It was a good one.
It was a good one.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, so Val and I were on the clock, so we're going to kind of put you on the hot seat to start off. You know, with respect to like balance, you know, doing the balancing act and, you know, having a sense of reality. How have you been able to do that in your own career?
I mean, I think you guys really hit the nail on the head. I think giving back is a huge part of it. And I think community is really important. For me and my family, the choice has been to live outside of Los Angeles. I live in a really rural community. I live in Canada. Not a single person that I am friends with up here really cares what I do for a living. Do you know what I mean? They're all like, so just to be clear, you tell stories. I'm a farmer. I feed people. So yeah, I mean, you're nice, but you're useless, right? So like, I think the minute you step out of the bubble of Hollywood, you realize that like most of the rest of the world isn't particularly impressed with us. And I think that's healthy because sometimes you do step back into Hollywood and people are like, you're amazing. You're like, your bar is so low. It's so low. Amazing is feeding people food that you grew on your own land. Ability to dress up for a living and say other people's words, not necessarily amazing, quite say. That's what I would say.
No, I hear you. So did you make that decision early on in your career? Was it before? Was it like after you had a level of success, you made a decision to do that?
Well, I mean, I grew up in Hawaii, which is a very like, I don't want to say anti-celebrity because nobody was mad, you know, like Bette Midler lives in Hawaii and I think Woody Harrelson, but like nobody cares. Like the big show when I was growing up was Magnum PI. Yeah. And Tom Selleck would like be wherever. He'd be at like the burger joint. He'd be on the beach. And people would be like, yep, that's Tom Selleck, and walk away. So I think because that's where I grew up, when I was in LA, it was just, it felt weird. It felt like this weird cult worship of this one industry, but like, it's only one thing you can do. And so I think because of that, I never felt at home in LA. I was like, where's everyone else? And so we moved up here to Canada, I think like right after I started Prison Break. And I would go back and forth to LA, but it became a place of roots here it's still the ballast. It's also out in the woods. And I think living in the country is useful too, because it's like, when it snows, you can either plow your driveway or you can't. Like, you can't charm your driveway into being drivable if it's covered in snow. You know what I mean? There's certain things about living in the country that like ground you because they just have to get done, you know?
Right, right. So early on, you recognized that Hollywood was like its own thing,
Yeah.
and that it was completely separate from, reality, especially the reality that you were used to growing up, right?
Yeah.
So then, what was the impetus that made you want to get into the business in the first place? Why did you want to be, an actor and actress in this business?
Yeah, good, really good question. I mean, I think again, it goes back to Hawaii, where I grew up. Hawaiian mythology and legends and stories were a huge part of my education. And actually, I came to the mainland and I was really surprised that like people here don't learn about the indigenous land that they're on. That's not like a thing. But by the time I was in third grade, like I knew just basics, like a few plants that you could use for, either decoration in leis or food, and like how to prepare them traditionally, and a few words in Hawaiian and like Hawaiian songs. And, I took hula dance when I was like 4, 5, and 6, because that's what every little girl did. And so there was kind of like a general sense of that culture being really obviously important, because it's the culture of the land that you're living on and the native people who are there. And the Hawaiian mythology has all these incredible stories about these goddesses that like are in charge of a lot of stuff. It's a very balanced mythology, right? When it comes to men and women and female power. And again, I got to the mainland and I was like, sorry, what stories are you guys telling? And, like some of it was I was like, but where are the women? Where's the strength? Where's the power? Why are we always being punished for stuff? And so I started realizing we are so formed by the stories that we tell, and the stories especially that we tell our children. And so being a storyteller felt sacred, but it also felt like, well, if I want to have an impact on the world, then maybe I can have an impact on the world by telling better, more inclusive stories than the ones I was seeing on TV and in film at the time.
So in essence, I mean, it sounds like you wanted to be the goddess, right? I'm just hearing things, right?
Maybe I wanted to elevate the goddess into something that was visible rather than be her myself. But when I saw the stories on television, I saw so few of the women that I knew.
Yeah.
I was like, where are the goddesses? Where are the grandmothers? Where are the women? I just couldn't find them.
Right. And it seems like education was always a part of your growing up, whether it was you, consuming, your surroundings. And then, of course, going to school. You were a very, very smart person, as your resume dictates. Was that something that was instilled by your parents? Was that something that you kind of catapulted yourself? Tell us a little bit about your educational background.
Well, this all goes back to Hawaii. It's ridiculous. Our roots are so vital to who we are. My parents both taught at the University of Hawaii. So my mom was in English department. She taught Shakespeare, feminist theory. My dad was in law school. And so like my parents would come home at the end of the day, we'd have a talk, we'd make dinner, and then they'd go do their homework. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is just what people do. So that was the house that I grew up in. It wasn't until that I met my husband and like after dinner, his family would like play cards and hang out and talk to each other. I was like, oh, look at this. You guys are so friendly. But yeah, I mean, it was just what you did. It was a lack of imagination on my part that I was never like, I'm going to do something else. I was just like, okay, I guess we're studying. So that's what I did.
Was there any kind of like, what was your support system like at home with respect to you wanting to get into the acting business?
Yeah, I mean, to my mom's credit, so teaching Shakespeare, right? She took me to a ton of plays when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my first exposure. It also meant that I was never intimidated by classical theater because, mom was like, it's just words. And so I don't know, I auditioned up for a play kind of like on a lark in junior high and in college and in high school. My parents were always, their perspective with anything I wanted to do is, that you're on your own financially. So if you can support yourself, make an honest living, good luck and God bless. But, you know, understand that that means that acting is not super stable financially, which is why I went and got a master's. So the reason I went to the National Theatre Conservatory was because with a master's degree, you can teach at a university because it's a terminal degree. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a set amount of time. And if I can't get a job as an actor, then I can start applying to teaching programs and I can get health insurance and a steady paycheck and that kind of thing that way.
So did you feel like you were kind of like on your own with respect to the answer that your parents gave you? I mean, they basically said like, go to school or figure it out.
Well, I mean, they were super supportive, but they were just like, we're professors. We can't support you. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't make rent by the end of the month, we might not be able to either. So don't expect a, like, you know, it's interesting what hunger gives you. I mean, I don't mean like I never starved. I just mean like knowing that you've got to do it on your own. There were kids that I went to school with all the way through, whether it was high school or college or grad school, who kind of they had it all. And they knew that there was this safety net. And I can't think of many of those kids who are still working, who made it. And I think partly it's because, like, when you know you have to hustle and that there isn't a safety net, there's, it does something to you. It makes you hungry. And so you try a little harder, or if it doesn't work, you kind of go this way, as opposed to like the people I knew who, like, they didn't get a job for 6 months, but their parents were paying their rent and it wasn't a big deal. And, you know, it got to feel like a hobby. Whereas for me, this line is it's in Lose Yourself somewhere. It's like, oh God, I'm never gonna be able to come up with this. But it's like where he's talking about, like, it's either this or like, I've got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna succeed, or, you know, like I can't die here. I can't die on this field. So this serves me right for trying to quote Marshall Mathers. Sorry.
No, it's definitely. I think what you're saying. I mean, it's a feast or famine kind of thing, right? Like you are going to make it or you don't.
Yeah, and it's on you. And when you know it's on you, there's a fire in your belly that makes you work harder.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, here's a perfect example. There was an audition, and this was the first part I got. There was an audition. My agent called me. It was 4:30 on a Friday, and it was a holiday weekend. And they were like, CBS is seeing people in an hour in Queens for some new show called Queen Supreme. Can you be there? And everybody had plans to be leaving the city. Do you know what I mean? Like, anybody who could like ride the train was getting out, because it was also like September, and it was just one of those times in New York where you're like, oh my God, you can't afford air conditioning, and it's awful. And I was like, yep, I can be there because it's a job. So took the train up to Midtown, because back then you had to get your audition sides had to come out of a file folder in front of your agent's office. From there, took the train to Queens, learning my lines on the train, got off, 3 people in the waiting room. 3 people showed up to that audition because it was 5:30 on a Friday by then, and it was a holiday weekend, and nobody wanted to come. And I was like, well, I gotta go. And I ended up getting it. And now you think about it, the odds of getting a role are almost never 1 in 3, right? I wasn't very good. I'd never done any work on camera, but I got the part. I was on Queen Supreme, amazing first cast, right? Scotty Caldwell, Robert Loggia, Annabella Sciorra, Oliver Platt. They liked me so much, they wrote 5 more episodes. They wrote me into 5 more episodes. So by the time I got out of that, I had a 6-episode arc on CBS, and I'd only been out of grad school for 6 months. And then people were like, oh, who's that? Bring her in. And so I was hungry enough that I skipped going out to wherever we were going, up the Hudson River Valley or something, for the weekend. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So do you think that it's, you know, is it work ethic? Is it talent? Is it the combination of the two that has helped you and continues to help you? What do you think it is?
Okay, so it's a couple things. John Bernthal's acting teacher, this woman named Alma, said to him, and he said to me, the first actor off book is going to be the best actor in the show. Right? So being prepared, being the one who shows up to the table read off book, that's a huge part of it, and that's what you can control. I can control that when I'm not working, I'm working on monologues, just so that I can stand in my living room and do stupid Shakespeare monologues that I will never use, just to like refine, right? I can control how hard I work. I can't really control how good I am.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because I mean, if you put in the work, and especially if you are emulating individuals that have produced great work,
sure.
then how can you not, control how good you are?
You can't control when there's grace. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in every great performance, there's an element of grace or fairy dust or whatever, or inspiration. You can't make that come, but you can prepare to the point where if it does come, you're ready to receive it and elevate it. I can't control how good I am relative to whoever else they're bringing in. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't control the fact that in their mind, they may want somebody who doesn't look like me. But I can't control the fact that when I walk in, I reassure them in that audition room, I will never let you down. I will not be late. I will not be unprepared. I will make other actors look good. I will not stop working. And maybe I can change their mind. I also think that, like, in the conversation of where did your success come from, it would be really, really dumb not to acknowledge that race is a huge part of that, right? Like, as a white woman, the number of roles that were written that I could audition for, especially starting when I started, which was getting out of grad school in April of 2002, were vastly bigger than the number of roles for my friends who were actresses of color, who were like, haven't had an audition in 3 weeks. And I'm like, it's pilot season, that's crazy. But every show had a role for a like 20-something white woman in it. And as time went on, now compared to roles for men, ridiculous, but still. And as time went on, those roles were leading roles, right? Like, so Council of Dads is the first show I've ever been on that has a leading role for a woman of color from the beginning. Michonne didn't show up in Walking Dead until season 3.
Wow.
Right? There was not a woman of color with a leading role on Prison Break until season 3. Denai Garcia showed up. Like, this is systemic. And so a lot of, what I think about is a lot of the actors that I came up with in Hawaii were Asian, and they did really well until they got into the professional realm, where people were like, yeah, we still need one of you. And they're like, wait, what? And they're not acting anymore. So that's got to factor into the conversation too.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? I mean, it seems like obviously you've been a part of a lot of successful shows. Why do you think that, I mean, obviously it's helped your career, but why do you think that it's been such a huge problem to bring people of color on until after it's quote unquote successful?
I think if you look at the top of who's buying shows, who's paying for shows, often they're not looking at statistics to decide what they buy. Because if you look at those statistics, shows with leading women and leading women of color and shows with people of color do just as well. Often it's a gut decision. And I have been in rooms where people just go, yeah, I just don't think people are going to connect to this. And I'm like, you don't connect to this because this isn't your world. But the world ends up getting remade in the image of the people who pay for it. And so until we start having, I mean, it's why what Tyler Perry did with his own studio is going to be a game changer, because once you have people who are not just straight white men paying for television and deciding what television gets picked up, what movies get financed, what movies get promoted well. Once you have that, then things start to change. Like, look at what $7 Productions is doing, right? Like, it's the Rock's production company. It's one of the most powerful movie stars in the world. It's a super diverse group of people that he's got working together. He's creating blockbuster shows starring people of color because he looks at his family and his life and himself, and he goes, yes, people are going to want to see this.
Yeah.
It's about power, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this fight has been since 3-year-old Sarah trying to tell princess stories, right? You know?
I just want to work with my friends.
What's probably been your most difficult moment in your career so far?
I left right after Walking Dead. I did Into the Storm. And then I did a play at the Kennedy Center. And then I took 6 months off to adopt my son. And I didn't keep my eye on my union health insurance.
Right.
And so because I hadn't made enough money in the Screen Actors Guild, because that play had been through Actors Equity, I got a call one day saying, your insurance is going to expire in 2 weeks. I'm the sole breadwinner for my family. I had a 6-year-old, I had a 4-month-old baby. Cobra was, I don't remember how much, but it was like $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And I never got paid on Walking Dead for a variety of reasons. So, in fact, I took a pay cut to do the job. And it scared the living daylights out of me. And I'm a big fan of smart economics, right? Like, you take care of the money that you have so that you can make creative choices and turn down work you don't like. But in that moment, I was like, I have to take the next job I'm offered, no matter what it is and no matter where it is, because I got to get my family back on health insurance. And my job as a breadwinner at this moment is way more important than my job as an artist. And the next job I was offered was on location, too far away from my family to come. So I had to wean my son at 6 months and spend 3 months away from him as a baby. And that broke my heart. Like, it sent me down a rabbit hole. I was really ashamed. I was like, I'm ashamed I didn't plan better, so that now I'm choosing between time with my son and being a provider. So I changed some things after that. You know what I mean? Just in terms of like constantly keeping an eye on the health insurance, the economics, the career. That was a low moment.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. But why would you feel ashamed of yourself though in that moment? It was something, I mean, from what you're saying, it was something that was kind of beyond your control, right?
Well, you know, if I had had my eye closer on the ball in that 6-month maternity leave, I could have called my agents and said, look, put me on an episode of anything. I don't care. 8 days of work, I'll hop on a plane, I'll leave my son with my husband, or I'll bring him with me. I'll come back. It'll be enough to get the health insurance going. But I didn't. I was so into I was like, oh, I've worked in the last 8 months, so I'm fine. Forgetting that it was theater. It was in the wrong union. And it's my job to keep an eye on that. And I mean, weaning my son, being like, see ya, kiddo, no more mama milk for you. I'll be back in 2 months. 3 months. I should have planned better than that. It's that simple. I should have planned better than that. That's my job. So, you know, thankfully he didn't remember it, but I will do everything I can not to make that mistake again.
Yeah. And is this a situation that's solely on you? I would think that having a team of people, your agent, your manager, your, whether it's like a business manager, whatever the case is, like, aren't people supposed to be there to be able to say, hey, Sarah, this is where we're at. This is what the situation is. We got to, do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So yes, technically. It would also have been great if the union had given me more than 2 weeks notice, right? Enough time to like get a job. And I know you two can relate to this. At a certain point in this business, you realize it's on me. If I want this done to my standards, if I want to take care of me and mine, I'm gonna say start a magazine. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
People will never do the kind of work for you that you do for yourself.
That's right.
They don't have the same skin in the game. So, you can fight it, you can be pissed about it. I spend a lot of wasted emotional time being pissed about it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that it's on me. It's always going to be on me.
No, I mean, we could definitely relate to that. As you said, I remember when we started the magazine, and it came from another situation prior to, and, Val and I were talking, and she said, it'll never be the same unless we do our own thing. And it was like the light bulb moment where it was like you said, it's on you, because depending on other people, as much as you want it to be, as much as it looks great on paper, in reality, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work out that way.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of paper, I want to go back to something. So you had mentioned that you didn't get paid on The Walking Dead.
Wow.
Like one of the most successful television shows to date, and a star of your caliber, okay? And you did not get paid on that show. Please explain.
I took a pay cut to do the show. I took a 2/3 pay cut to do the show.
Why?
Because the show was a creative risk, and the studio involved wasn't a particularly established one. Like they hadn't done a lot. And because when a show is successful, they renegotiate. So you go, okay, I will take a creative risk on you. And then if we do well, then we make things right. But they wait until after the second season to do that. And after the second season, they called me up and they said, we're not renegotiating with you because we've decided to kill you next season. So, I mean, yeah, it was, don't get me wrong, it was a paying job, but like there was no
yeah, I'll say it for you. This was like, listen, this sounds like the biggest bait and switch that I've ever heard of.
That was trickeration.
I don't know. I have no idea what went on behind the scenes, and I never will. I don't think it was personal. I just think, I was coming off of Prison Break, and that show was a known show, but they weren't. Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know. I'd do it again. I mean, I'll be honest, my representatives were like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't take the pay cut. You spent your whole career getting yourself to a position where like, you've developed a value for your work, and you're now getting rid of 2/3 of that. And I was like, yeah, but I believe in this and I love it. And also like, I didn't get into this because I was like, ooh, I'm going to be an actor and get rich. Like, that's ridiculous.
Of course.
I got into it because I wanted to tell great stories, and it was a great story. And, thankfully, some of my friends ended up making a fortune on that show, and that's awesome. And I'm happy for them. But, I'm good. It's just how it works.
From the recognition that you got from that show, though, and the cons, what do you call it? The cinema, not Comic-Con style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a little bit of residual that you can get benefit from since
Sure.
you're the main? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
A
mean,
little back end to that at least makes up, right? A little bit of that.
well, and I think there probably have been several jobs that I've gotten afterwards that I got because the filmmakers or the people involved or whatever saw Walking Dead and they went, yeah, let's do that. Absolutely. And that's the thing, like in this business, you never know what it is. What's the element that, I mean, I was on the Skype with a director the other day who offered me a part that I'm really excited about it. And he was like, I was the biggest Colony fan. And I was like, whoa.
Me too. Me too. Love Colony. Yes.
He'd never seen Prison Break. He'd never seen Walking Dead. He's like,
wow.
I wanted to hire you because of Colony. And I was like, God love you. Thank you so much. So yeah, you never know. You never know what it is that's going to drive stuff like that. And what's funny is there's some like pinball machine or something, or like slot machines and stuff they made with the first season cast on it. And they're like in Vegas, and every couple of months you get a residual check from it. It's not huge, but if those machines stay in Vegas for the next 20 years, I'll have made more on them than I did on the show. And it's like, dude, great. It's like, it's free money. That's what residuals are. You open up a check and you're like, okay, great. Because right now I'm not working and now we're going to be okay. It's all fine. And I would do it again tomorrow. I would not make a different decision. Yes. I would not make a different decision at all. Not for one single second.
Yeah.
So when you decide to take on a project, like for example, you look at a project like Prison Break, which was like a cult favorite, right? Mm-hmm. Uber popular. Does the uber popularity of the show always translate to larger finances, meaning the show actually makes more money, or does it? How does that normally work?
Well, I mean, with a show like Prison Break, yes, because the show was available on television, which meant that they could sell advertising, mm-hmm. and they would make more money on it. Mm-hmm. It's a weird model now because, you've got shows that, like from what I understand, what's that show? It's on NBC. It's the Christina Hendricks show where they're like stealing money. Good Girls, maybe?
Good Girls.
Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. Like from what I understand, Good Girls, like the ratings aren't huge, but on streaming, the secondary viewer market, it's a huge hit. And so they've got a ton of viewers. They've got loyal fans. They love them. But where's the money coming from? Because airing live, the numbers aren't huge. So like advertisers still aren't paying a fortune for it. So I don't know. I've got no tea on that show because I don't know anybody on it, but it's an interesting example to me of a show that like is both successful and maybe not a huge money driver. Mm. And right. So I don't know in this new marketplace with shows like that, I don't know.
It's interesting because with Prison Break, I've got some friends in the Middle East who like, they love you. They're like, oh my goodness, you work with Sarah, and it's like, yeah, I work with Sarah. Like, she's cool. No, she's amazing. She's amazing. So, I mean, so how does that translate, like, money wise, when you guys hit like other markets, when the show gets to other markets, you make more money there than you would here in the States, or is it an equal amount, or how does that?
No, foreign residuals are not huge. I mean, when they sell the show to the Middle East, we get a tiny fraction of the set. You know what I mean? Like it's probably a few $100s. I guess in some cases it might be a couple $1,000. Mm-hmm. But that's money that goes to the studios and the networks to or the studio to kind of recoup their thing. And I don't believe it matters how successful the show is over there because they just buy the show. But what I think would matter is if it's such a big hit that then they buy it again to license it a second time or a third time. Those things all do translate into residual checks, but residual checks that are, like it might be $3,000 the first time and $900 the second time and $600 the third time. It's free money. Like always happy to open the check. But it's not you're not gonna live on it. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of thing that makes the difference though, in those times that you're not working. I mean, I got a residual check for a penny last month. from an episode I did of, it was a procedural on CBS. Numbers. It was a penny for like the 15th rerun in Thailand. And I was like, thanks, Thailand. Appreciate you.
I wonder how many bots you can get out of that penny. I don't know.
I don't know. There is a bar though. I think it's on Ventura. It's called Residuals. Mm-hmm. And if you bring in a residual check for, I think it's less than $1, they give you a free beer. And so, they bought me a beer when I can get back to that bar.
Oh, that's funny. How do you, I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, and Val also kind of brought it up with respect to like all the different cons that you go to, whether it's like WonderCon or if it's like any other one of the big ones, Comic-Con. Yeah. How do you like separate that? Because that's a lot. I would think that that's a lot of pressure when, people either come up specifically looking for you or dressing up, looking like you. And, I'm sure there's like sheer amount of confusion of like, whoa, like this is crazy. Like, how do you kind of like stay in like stay engaged, but also detached, safely, I guess?
It takes a minute. The first one I ever did, I never did them while I was on the show. The year I left, John and Norman talked me into doing one. And so I think it was Cincinnati, I think it was Horror Hound. And the three of us were in a room and it was just tables, people came up. And I think the episode where I died had aired recently. There was a lot of emotion. And it was full on for 3 days.
Whoa.
And I went home and my husband went, how was it? And I just started sobbing. And like, I couldn't stop for like an hour. And it was very much, it was like you take all this in. And then I saw, I saw my partner and I was just like, excuse me, I just have to get it out. Ugh. So after that, I learned like slightly more boundaries. A big part of it was, one of my rules is I do cons with my friends. And so there was a group, it was Scott Wilson, John Bernthal, and Norman and I would go to dinner Friday night and Saturday night. And it was like, you know what, this is just a chance for me to be flown somewhere in the world to meet up and have dinner with my buddies. And this other thing is going to be cool and fun, but secondary. And that would be super, super grounding. And then Norman got so huge at those things that like Saturday night, he was like signing until 1 a.m. We're like, dude, we're eating without you. Good luck. God bless. We're also charging it to your room. But yeah, it's a weird thing. But the other thing about conventions is that for me, right, I came out of theater, and a convention is an opportunity as an actor in film and television to connect with your audience. Mm-hmm. We don't have those opportunities really, right? If you do a play, at the end of the play, people either clap or they like turn around and walk out of the theater, and you're like, okay, well, that's information. But yeah, there's something beautiful about connecting with people who connect to your work. Every now and again, it gets a little intense, but whatever, we're fine.
Yeah, and seeing the excitement level, like full on, firsthand, like you get to see that people really love the show. You get to see that energy. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It can be really beautiful when people, oh my God, I watched this with my family, my grandma and I, and the fun stuff is what surprises you. Like, I always get these guys who come up, and it's kind of a convention thing, but they're these giant dudes, right? Like leather vests, tatted up, full Harley Davidson, like chains and skull rings and everything. You see them coming, you're always like, whoa. And then they come up and they're so sweet. They're like, hi. When mom and I watched the show and I'm such a big fan. And I was like, I guess a guy like you has to talk very quietly whenever you talk to somebody. But it's an interesting opportunity to like challenge your assumptions about people who come up to you and you see them from like 20 feet away and you're like, I think I know what this is going to be. And then they get there and you're like, I was totally wrong. Let's do this again. It's useful.
Great.
Nah, that's awesome. Earlier you talked about how you wanted to tell stories. And you also see some of the disadvantages that people of color have. A lot of them are your friends. What are you doing right now to be able to like tell those stories with respect to like producing or directing, writing? How are you using your platform to be able to try to help and fix that problem?
Yeah, writing, producing, directing. I mean, that's a huge part of it for me. I mean, interestingly, I started writing 6 years ago. I couldn't sell anything. And finally, one of my agents was like, you have to stop writing stories only about women of color. And I was like, why? Like, show me the statistics. And they were like, it's not selling. Like, I have this volleyball movie that I wrote about the first women's volleyball team at the University of Hawaii in 1972. They were Title IX babies. It's an amazing sports story. It's like, you know, it's like Remember the Titans or A League of Their Own. Like, it's the kind of story that we've all seen and we all love. And I was like, why is it so hard? And they're like, because the first team of women at Hawaii was like Filipina, Japanese, Hawaiian. Do you know what I mean? Like it was too, and their athletic director, this woman who was like this incredible historical figure who went to war for them, was a Black woman from Chicago. And they're like, studios don't see this as a viable movie. That was years ago. Now I've got a really fancy producer attached, which I'm very proud of. And studios now are like, you know, we've been looking for material like this. I'm like, I pitched you 2 years ago. You know what I mean? Stop it. So I think that's part of it, right? Like, it's just tell the stories of the people you know. And maybe as I move a little bit forward in the business, I get to know more powerful producers who can be like, do you know what? I'm going to call Disney. I'm going to tell them I think this is a good idea. I will get you into the room, and then we will work on this together. And also with every Hidden Figures, every empire, like, it becomes harder and harder and harder to make the argument that it's not financially, you know what I mean? You're like, that's not math. It's not math. So that's, you know, and like, I've got this podcast that I wrote, and it's, you know, it's got a Hawaiian woman and a Black woman and me in it. And just, we're kind of trying to sort some stuff out in the script. Like these are the things that we're sort of working together on. What I need to sell something so that I have enough money to have a writer's room, because we need all the voices. You know what I mean? Like, we're at a point where I'm like, I shouldn't be writing for Black women. I should be hiring Black women to write for Black women. Do you know what I mean? Like, we should be doing this together. But that requires a budget, which requires a sale. And I'm pitching stuff in 2 weeks. So I will have updates for you if I sell something.
That's fantastic. Yeah. What do you see is the difference between diversity and inclusion?
So diversity means, in our writer's room, we have a man of color and a woman. And when the 8 of us white guys want their perspective, we go, speak for your people. And the person that they're talking to goes, okay. And if the rest of the room doesn't agree with them, they go, no. Inclusion means, in a writer's room of 10 people, you have no majority. You have a balance of gender, you have a balance of race, you have a balance of sexual orientation, so that when somebody goes, well, tell me about the Black experience in this moment, there's somebody to go, well, this is mine. And somebody goes, well, this is mine. They're different. Somebody goes, well, this is mine, and this is what my mom would say. And so it's a discussion. So there's many levels of representation. And so that those voices can't be silenced. I mean, you know, I've been on projects where a woman's name was on the project as the only woman in the writer's room. And she's coming to me going, you need to know that every word of this script was rewritten. I would never have written you this way. And I'm kind of going, well, yeah, because women don't talk this way. You know what I mean? Like, I'm having trouble memorizing my lines because we don't do this. That's the difference.
And there's no way for you, like, you have do you have no control over that? Like once the script is handed to you, how much latitude do you have to be able to make it authentic?
I think we have more latitude now because I think there's an understanding that voices need to be heard. I've been in situations where I've made what my bosses have considered too much noise and was physically pulled into a showrunner's office and forced to apologize for saying that I thought that there were problems with my character's representation as a woman. I don't think they would do that now. I don't think they would necessarily do it. It depends. There are people who truly believe in doing the right thing and they do it. And I think about like my bosses on Council of Dads, Tony and Joan, like they have been hiring in a truly inclusive way since way before, they came up in Shondaland, right? So like way before people were doing it out of fear. My concern is that when people do it out of fear, they're doing the right thing through gritted teeth. That doesn't always work. So it's about like, all the people who worked under Tony and Joan, now they're going out and they're starting their own shows, right? And so they're hiring with this sense of like, let's talk about it. And let's talk about it and let's be willing to be vulnerable because it does take courage, I think, for anybody to go, okay, I'm about to say something, I could be wrong. Please let's be respectful with one another in our mischaracterizations and misjudgments. Let's listen with open hearts to go, whoa, I was totally wrong. I'm so sorry. Thank you for that education, right? Like we have to be able to have these conversations, but those conversations aren't safe unless the room has everybody in it. I don't want to be the only woman in a room feeling uncomfortable because here she goes again. I want to have 4 other women with me going, Sarah, honestly, respectfully, I disagree for this reason. I would put it this way. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's do it like that, No, does that answer your question?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely does. You and I had a conversation a couple of months ago, I think, or maybe the last time we saw each other. There was a point in your career where you were ready to walk away from it all. I was shocked when you told me that. Why did you, or why were you in that position of ready to walk away, and what made you get back in?
It's happened a couple of times. I think the first time, the first time was shortly after Walking Dead because I kept reading all these television scripts and I was like, I don't want to be the long-suffering wife of the male lead who's technically the female lead but only has 3 scenes an episode, and all of those scenes only exist to get the guy from point A to point B. I don't have my own emotional life. I don't have my own. I was just like, I'm not interested in that anymore. And there's a point in your career where any job is a good job. And then I think there's a point in your career where you start going, okay, I've got enough stability financially and as a career to start making creative decisions. So you look around at what you want, and it's not there. That's the point then when I got a manager, which I'd never really had before, but this guy, Brian Medavoy, who's represented me ever since, he sat me down and he goes, I've been trying to track you down and represent you for 5 years. I hear you're about to leave the business. Why? And I told him, and he goes, give me 6 months to inspire you again. We'll find the roles together. We'll get you writing. We'll get you directing. Don't give up. Don't give up. So I owe him a lot of that. And he was as good as his word. Nobody that I know has ever worked harder to first of all, listen for an education of these are the roles, don't bother sending me. This is what I'm looking for. And so he'd be like, okay, I'm setting you up with this producer so that you can sit down and have these conversations. It was brilliant. And then, right before Council of Dads, I was like, I think this acting thing, maybe I just want to do something else. Maybe I want to direct and produce and write, because I mean, there's a thing about the acting thing, you know, there's the publicizing stuff and the press lines and the appearance and all that stuff. And I was thinking I was pretty ready to hand that over. And I wanted very specifically to put something positive and loving into the world, and I wasn't seeing it. Television was so bleak and so sarcastic and like kind of mean. Yep. And there's a place for that, but even a lot of comedy was like making fun of you comedy, you know what I mean? And along came Council of Dads, and I read it and I was like, oh, I remember these shows. These are the shows I came up on. These were the family shows that I watched with like my dad and my stepmom and my stepbrothers and all of our friends. And like, I wanted that. And so, you know, I would have tried to create it, but Tony and Joan beat me to it. And I was like, well, hey, that's way easier to just try and get involved with your thing. And so I ended up not giving up.
And it's such a beautiful story, because I remember when the very first time you were actually going to do a press for Council of Dads, and you showed me the trailer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you know, like you cried on the trailer. Like you're like on the show.
Yeah.
You're on the show, and you saw the trailer and you cried, and I didn't cry, but I was moved. And I was like, wow, like this really meant something to her. And now I see why.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks for saying that. Yeah, it did. It meant a lot. It meant a lot.
I feel like you have a passion for goodness, which is not something that you see in a lot of people. And that's very much appreciated. You know, speaking on that goodness, you know, I know one of the things that you're very passionate about is the IRC, the International Rescue Committee. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I'm hoping to get involved in as well too, after speaking to you about it. So thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about what the initiatives for the IRC are, and how you're involved yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we were supposed to be in Africa right now, like right now. So the International Rescue Committee was, they do refugee work around the world, and then resettlement initiatives in the US. They were founded in 1933 at the behest of Albert Einstein to get the Jews out of occupied Europe. And it was like 6 guys and a Jeep, just like driving into occupied Europe and like putting people in the back of the Jeep and covering them up. You know what I mean? Like it was very, very kind of guerrilla. And now, you know, we're all over the place. We're in the Middle East and Southeast Asia and Africa and South America and Central America. My grandfather was a refugee. He came to the United States when he was 8 and fell flat on his face. There was no real refugee services to speak of. He sold apples on the streets for years and just kind of lived hand to mouth. And he eventually, you know, he got on his feet. He ran Fred Astaire dance studios in Chicago for Fred by the time he died. But I think about what it would have been like if there had been something to catch him and to help. And I think about how many people fell through the cracks. So as his granddaughter, you know, this work that matters to me, and the thing that we were going to be doing is the IRC recently got 2 amazing grants. They got a grant from the Lego Foundation for $100 million over 5 years to do early childhood education in the refugee camps in different places in Africa. They're going to start, the program I think is going to start piloting in Uganda, and it was supposed to start rolling out now. So we were going to go and check it out and see like the beginning of this kind of thing. They got basically a matching grant from the MacArthur Foundation for $100 million to do early childhood education in refugee camps in the Middle East. And so I think the big takeaway is that it used to be that refugee camps were transit points, right? You know, you come from wherever you were, you'd find shelter, you'd move on to a place where you could be resettled. Now you've got people who've been living in these refugee camps for years. Mm-hmm. So like when I was in Domi's camp in Kurdistan in 2013, a lot of the people who were there then are still there. So that's 7 years. And a lot of them had young children. So that's 7 years where those kids aren't getting, you know, I mean, during this COVID shut down. You've got parents on the Upper East Side freaking out because their kid's going to miss 6 months of school. Like, imagine what 7 years feels like. So this hopefully gets in there and starts doing learning through play and addressing these early childhood things. Because, you know, through education, when these kids get wherever they're going to get to, then they can go, okay, I am ready to be a doctor. So let's go to med school and let's get this thing going, as opposed to I'm landing someplace else and I'm 21 years old and I don't know my basic math and science stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah. And yeah, after hearing that myself, I was like, yeah, where do I sign up? I mean, it's just, you know, you can't do, there's a lot of good things that people are doing, but I don't know if you can do more goodness than that. Like, that's just, it's a beautiful thing to be able to just help someone, and especially along the ways of education. So kudos to you for making that happen.
Well, kudos to IRC for getting $200 million worth of grant money.
That too.
Somebody wrote some really beautiful grants. And I think it's also a testament to the kind of work they've been doing, you know, that they were entrusted with this kind of money. So you and I get to go hopefully and amplify and brag about them a whole bunch.
Looking forward to it. Wow. Well, listen, you've had such, you've given us, such great, stories about your journey in this business. For people that are in this business right now, actors that are already working or actors that are coming up, what are 3 solid things that you would be able to leave them with to provide them with a roadmap to success in this business? 3 solid things.
Don't be afraid to be the hardest worker in the room. Develop your own material. And be nice to everyone. The guy who's bringing coffee is going to be running a studio in 10 years. He will remember your name if you scream at him for bringing you a latte instead of a cappuccino. I don't drink coffee, so maybe those are the same thing, but there's no irrelevant people. Be nice or keep your mouth shut to everyone.
Really, really good advice, and we really appreciate it. Listen, we've come to the fun part of the show. It's a very quick part. It's called a quick 5. And basically what it is that Val's going to ask you 5 questions. Whatever comes to your mind, don't do Sarah. Don't analyze it. Don't, you spit it out. All right? Because I know you.
Okay. All right. You got it. I promise.
All right. Val, take it away.
Okay, Sarah. The first question's easy. What is your favorite travel destination?
Prague.
I need to go.
I haven't been since 1997, but you said don't think about it. So Prague.
Okay, if you were stuck on an island and you could only take one thing, what would that be?
A freezer full of ice cream.
Love it. And with that, what's your least favorite food?
Fish.
Ooh. Okay. What movie can you watch over and over and over again?
Princess Bride.
I agree with that. And would you rather be stuck in an elevator for 5 hours or on a plane for 10 hours?
A plane for 10. There's a bathroom.
Yes. Those were all great answers. I love it. Fantastic.
I can't not eat for 5 hours.
Fish, though. Like, you're in Canada. You don't like fish?
I'm allergic.
Oh.
But not like I have to go to the hospital. Like, if I eat it, I throw up. So.
Got it. That makes sense.
I know.
Well, with that, unfortunately, Sarah, we are going to have to say goodbye, but we want to thank you so much for joining us, for being here with us. We want to thank also to our listeners for listening in, but also sending in some really, really good questions that we could analyze. And Sarah, how can the good people out there keep up with you on social media?
Instagram, I think, is probably my primary platform. That's just my name, Sarah Wayne Callies. I joined Twitter to live tweet Colony. So nope. To live tweet Council of Dads. Hi, this is my mom brain. So that's Sarah W. Callies, I think, on Twitter. And then I'm also on Facebook, although I don't really know how to use it. So I just post stuff. So if you say something to me on Facebook, I'll never answer because I don't know how. That's it.
Practical again.
Uneducated, but my life is never going to have enough time in it to learn to use Facebook. I don't care enough.
I hear you. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we wish you well until the next time.
It was great to see you guys.
All right. You too.
Be well. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Regard Breakdown. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcasts. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn Plus Alexa, Deezer, and much more. And if you'd like to see video content from our podcast, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Regard Breakdown. And for all other social platforms, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook with the handle @Regard Breakdown. Until then, we'll see you next time.